So you're planning to make a Jarvis army out of it, like an Iron Man or something?
So first you need to get the device, which is like an investment of like, let's say, $1,500. And I think by now I have 80 robots.
Oh wow, you are the
I have
vacuum robots.
I have like racks where the robots are kind of stapled like that. One of the fun things which we at some point developed is like, I think we were the first one, robot botnet in a way, so robot botnet, where our expert can jump from one robot to another. So if you're living in a big house and multiple people have an Ecovacs robot, we can start to infecting the first robot, and this first robot can start infect other ones which are in proximity of it.
Oh,
so
that's
we don't even need to be close to one. Hey, can we somehow use the ultrasonic sensor as a microphone to kind of spy on people? And because technically ultrasonic sensor is a speaker and the microphone, and we were thinking like, can we kind of finesse something? And it didn't work. And
reality is stranger than fiction,
absolutely.
sort of a thing. I think it also depends on where the robot is, and because if you have, so tomorrow the same firmware and software is used for robots which are in public places or in more critical places and all of that, the impact will be much higher. And given that these are devices that move, you can control, or attackers can essentially control them much better.
In some cases, we kind of inspire from each other by luring employees, and then the source code looks very, very similar. So it's like random things where they try to crack down and us like to kind of be able to read it. So imagine you have a smart lock, you want to get into your apartment and it doesn't work and you're kind of locked out, right? So
they do have the manual key override.
But do you have the manual key with you all the time?
Yeah, no. So that's the reason that you bought the lock, right? So
exactly.
Hi and welcome everyone to this episode of Breakpoint. We have Dennis Giese with us here at NullCon. His topic of the talk was how EcoVac robots got hacked and what we can learn. He is an independent security researcher and is known for hacking robots, and he has spoken at multiple conferences including DEF CON. Welcome to Breakpoint, Dennis.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invite.
How are you liking the conference?
So NullCon is one of my favorite conferences. The only thing is for me as a European or like someone who's living in America now is like, the temperature and heat. But other than that, I really enjoy the conference and it's a great crowd here.
Okay, great. So your topic was quite interesting. One of the things that drew me to it was the IoT aspect. So EcoVac robots, and we're talking about robots generally, and I think you had a great set of attacks that you found there. I wanted you first maybe start with, just for the listeners to understand, what way did you try with the EcoVac robots? How was your journey with finding issues in that, and what were your challenges specifically there?
Yeah, so I mean, initially I didn't even start with EcoVacs. Well, I kind of started, but I moved to other companies. So I do the robot hacking now for something like 7 or 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So I started very early on, like in 2017, I was giving my first talk about Xiaomi vacuum robots. And I moved over then to Roborock, Dreamy at some point, and now the latest victim is kind of EcoVacs. And one of the interesting things is like all of them had more or less the same things kind of broken. So it's like it's not a thing which is just impacting EcoVacs.
Okay.
But nowadays there was a huge outcry, like public outcry about EcoVacs. And it was just a little bit unfortunate for them because, they kind of made the mistake and ignored the problem. But generally, what I do usually is like I disassemble devices, I reverse engineer the app, I try to figure out if there's like a way to, jailbreak the device to kind of disconnect it from the cloud and run my own software. On the other side, I'm kind of like keep an eye out for if they send telemetry home, which they shouldn't send, because I'm a little paranoid maybe. But I do a bunch of other tests too. And one thing which I noticed, for example, was like that the EcoVacs app, which is on your phone, it didn't check for TLS or SSL certificates. So, which means basically the app didn't verify that it's actually talking to EcoVac servers.
Or not,
and so people could just do man in the middle and like steal your credentials and your authentication tokens for the EcoVacs app and then basically access your account. So every time you connect to a public Wi-Fi in a hotel, at an airport, you might have been compromised. The other thing which we found was that there was like an attack over Bluetooth to robots, like vacuum robots and lawn mowing robots and some other robots or professional robots, where you, with a simple, like a standard Android or iPhone app, you can send a malicious payload to them, will execute it, and you basically take over the control
This is
over
over Bluetooth?
Bluetooth. Yeah.
Wow.
And the lawnmowers in particular, we use like Bluetooth modules which are long range, so that you can control the lawnmower like in bigger distances. And these you can hack up to like 130 meters apart, away. And one of the fun things which we at some point developed is like, I think we were the first ones in a way that we developed like a robot botnet in a way, so robot botnet, where our expert can jump from one robot to another. So if you're living in a big house and multiple people have an EcoVax robot, we can start to infecting the first robot, and this first robot can start infect other ones which are in proximity of it.
Oh,
so
that's great.
we don't even need to be close to one. We can do it like more far apart. Interestingly, even though that this Bluetooth problem was like the biggest one which we found, the one which kind of lost EcoVax a lot of money was like a completely different one. This was like a mistake which we made in the app, that to access the camera, you need to basically use a PIN, and the PIN was checked on the app but not the robot. So if you manipulate the app to just accept it, like client-based, like honest-based authentication, then the robot would just still like establish a connection. And we published the whole thing in December. Well, we informed them like in 2023, and we gave a talk about that, and we just didn't react basically. And we gave another talk at DEF CON last year. And then we figured out that someone was actually using our talk and figured out what the exploit is, and hacked a couple users in the US by brute forcing their credentials, so credential stuffing basically.
Oh, okay.
And this was like actually not even a big deal. We were like the 10 people or something which were impacted by that, but in one day Roborock lost like 10% of their market share, basically. Not market share, but their market cap. The stock went down. You can actually see like the moment when the article was published about that, it just went down. So
yeah, because depending on what the robot itself can do, there is a lot of things that you can, end up doing.
Exactly. So the thing which which kind of surprised me in a way is like how powerful devices nowadays are. So in 2017, back then when we were doing like the first kind of talk, we thought like, okay, we have like a vacuum robot and it has like an ultrasonic sensor, no cameras, nothing, and we were thinking like, hey, can we somehow use the ultrasonic sensor as a microphone to kind of spy on people? And because I mean, technically ultrasonic sensor is a speaker and a microphone, and we were thinking like, can we kind of finesse something? And it didn't work. And nowadays, if you buy a robot today, it has like multiple cameras, it has like multiple microphones.
Yeah, yeah.
And so whatever we tried to achieve back then is basically
now.
integrated, like already like basically integrated in the robots. So taking over a robot is like way more critical, because it's not like just taking over a camera, like an IP camera, but this device has microphones and cameras, but it can also move around in your home. And so basically what happened was that the hackers, which used credential stuffing and used one of our exploits, we're hacking robots in America. We're driving around in people's apartments. We're shouting racist slurs at kids and people, and we're trying to run over pets. And so it's kind of like, every time people were asking me, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen with a vacuum robot? I was not even imagining that this is like actually thing. I was like, yeah, we can steal your map data from your home. We can steal your Wi-Fi credentials. We can maybe, if they have cameras, like, get pictures. But I never imagined. Reality basically overtook the possibilities what I was able to imagine.
Yeah, it's a reality stranger than fiction sort of a thing. I think it also depends on where the robot is, and because if you have, so tomorrow the same firmware and software is used for robots which are in public places or in more critical places and all of that, the impact will be much higher. And given that these are devices that move, you can control, or attackers can essentially control them much better. So thanks for finding these issues and talking about it. What were your challenges that you had when you were trying to find these issues? Any specific controls?
Yeah, so I mean, there's multiple ways to kind of go about the problem. One of the issues is like, I mean, the simplest way is like, instead of just doing a black box test in a way, you get to somehow the firmware, right? And the firmware extraction, this can be challenging at some point. You need to disassemble. So first you need to get the device, which is like an investment of like, let's say $1,500.
Yeah.
And you need to have the risk of like, okay, this device might be broken after I touch it, because you open it up, so you break warranty seal, so you cannot, send it back because you messed up something. And so then you need to disassemble it, get somehow the flash, be able to read out the flash to kind of figure out how the firmware works. If there's encryption keys, get the encryption keys. When we looked at the app, we need to kind of disassemble the app, like decompile it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of kind of work like in getting the software first, which then you can use to analyze it, and then from there you get like some root access, try to get like access on the robot itself, so you can observe what's happening on the robot, and track a couple other things. So it's like basically you try to get information first, like a recon kind of thing. You get firmware, you analyze the firmware, and then you see if it's something that's going on. One of the things which we also do is like we have some experience with particular processors and not with others. And so we try to figure out before we buy a device, like, okay, is it a processor which we kind of familiar with? How performant is the hardware? Because if it's like a dumb robot, then we try and, we're not trying to bother basically. But if it's something which we're kind of familiar with, we buy it. And, I think by now I have 80 robots.
Oh, wow. You are the
I have
vacuum robots.
Yeah, I have I have racks where the robots are kind of stapled like that. And like boxes over boxes, like.
So you're planning to make a Jarvis army out of it, like an Iron Man or something?
Yeah, I wish. I mean, nowadays, we were joking with the lawn mowing robots. I mean, they're basically vacuum robots with knives. But we will see. I mean, maybe there will be one day home defense robots by Ecovacs or Xiaomi. Who knows?
Yeah,
so,
that'll be fun. Just one part I wanted to double click on. Did you find any kind of obfuscation? I think it looks like a good use case for firmware obfuscation. Yeah. Are there any vendors that are doing that today in terms of controls?
Yeah, so all of them try. So, for example, Roborock, what they do is like they encrypt like all firmware, like all the interesting application parts. There's a lot of obfuscation. There's secure boot, so they enable. I mean, after we hacked them so much, we kind of started to kind of lock down everything. For Ecovacs, we used like a lot of obfuscation. Like there was like a lot of XOR. There was like a lot of like shift by 25 and stuff like that. So, so that if you run like a strings operation on
obfuscation.
Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, but if you run like a strings and you look for particular like text patterns, you won't find them because they were XORed with like something. They added obfuscation, and Ecovacs in particular, they added obfuscation like 6 years ago. Okay. And they just kept it. Probably the engineer which introduced it is not even there anymore. But so there's like a lot of obfuscation, and there's like some kind of battle between all the companies because we will try to keep the IP, don't disclose the thing. So some of the vendors are a little bit mad at us that we kind of root their devices because that gives also their competitors an opportunity to look what they do. Yeah. In some cases, we kind of inspire from each other by luring employees, and then the source code looks very, very similar. So there's like random things where they try to crack down on us, like to kind of be able to read it. But nowadays we kind of got very specialized in that because we do it for quite a long time now. In contrast, if you start from zero right now, you will have a lot of trouble, like in like even getting like a feeling for what's going on.
Yeah. I think many times as researchers, we are not interested necessarily on a specific vendor, but you find this pattern in across the vendors, and then you see that it's a common issue, whatever we keep finding. One of the things which I was thinking about when I thought about the robots is one of the things, right? We have so many other home automation devices, systems which are in play. In fact, at least in India, we know there are real estate, we sell flats and buildings and apartments, houses, based on how much automation you can provide, and which is a USP for them, which means you will have a ton of automation going in these homes in future. And these homes are now just not automation friendly, they are also like living homes in a way. They're listening to you, and obviously they're watching you. They will have cameras and microphones like you mentioned and all of that, and this is very current data. So what's special in IoT data is very current sort of a data. It's not just the data, static data, but it's changing, like your temperature, maybe your pressure, or what are the items you may have in your fridge. These days we have all of that as well. So it tells you when you are at home, when you're not at home. So it's very current, like it's just right now, right? So that's special about that data, that somebody can track you as well. So two things I had here. One is the control of the device itself, which you were talking about. The other is the data that it has. So with respect to data security there and privacy, what are the implications that you see with respect to how much control attackers can have if these controls are not in place?
So one problem which you generally have with smart home devices or IoT devices is they are so-called physical cyber physical systems, right? So you have a cyber component and you have a physical component. For example, they control light, temperatures, and other things. So they have like an impact on your real, like actual real properties in your house. I see it quite often actually, but people build like more and more smart home things in their home to control light and all these other things. And one thing which many people don't realize is all the vendors create a lot of telemetry.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary that you see the thing right now, but you see like all these devices. If you monitor the network traffic, all of them sending back like telemetry, like how often you use it, what's your temperature right now and stuff like that. So you can profile people with that in one way. So like when someone is waking up, when someone is like, you can basically follow the whole thing. And one thing is like, companies say like, okay, it's for like the improvement of the product. But on the other side, there's always the kind of like the worry that they might use it like for advertisement or selling like the data for someone. Yeah. And the other thing is like the government might be also very interested in that, like to see like what are you up to, right? So this is like a dystopian kind of thing, which might be a problem at some point. So with vacuum robots in particular, or with what we see is like they send a lot of camera data back. No matter if you agreed or didn't agree to that, they don't delete data from their cloud service. We had a case where we deleted the account, we deleted the device, and with a particular way, we were still able to access like the maps and other things, right? So there's a huge generation of data, and on the other side, one thing which you see quite often is also when an IoT company gets bankrupt or decides like not to support a product. Then basically this product is useless. Not only useless, but it's like super expensive for you because like let's say it's a smart switch. You need to get an electrician to kind of change it. You need to do something to kind of change it. It was like the case with the Nest heating systems where the servers kind of went down for a bit and people couldn't like turn on the heat anymore, right? So this thing was not doing anything. And this is a regular occurrence that companies decide like, okay, we're not supporting the product anymore, or they got bought up by a bigger company and just like drop support. And then you're kind of sitting in an apartment which you can't control anymore because there's no internet connectivity, or the servers don't exist anymore, and so you basically, you're kind of screwed. And the other thing, obviously, with smart home or IoT devices is you are dependent on internet. So if you have a power outage or if the internet goes down,
there are too many points of failure.
Exactly.
In a way, and the attack surface, I think, is also much bigger that way.
Yeah. Right? You don't know necessarily, so if you buy an apartment, you don't know if the switch which you have in your apartment is like malicious or not. If like whoever lived in the apartment there and didn't install.
Is your supply chain for IoT?
Yeah, it might be a supply chain issue, but let's say whoever was living in the apartment before kind of implanted something.
Poisoned, huh?
Yeah. And so if I disassemble a normal mechanical switch, I know like, okay, this is like how it should look like. For an IoT switch, you don't know what kind of firmware is running, and you have no way to figure it out. I mean, there's no way for you as a customer to figure out, okay, this software which is running on like my toaster oven is basically legitimate and not malicious.
This is definitely, I think it's a given that we should have manual overrides for most of these systems because of the possibility of genuine failures in general, but also all kinds of malicious issues where availability and other things can be compromised. Okay, so the other thing that I had was, while you're looking at so many of these vacuum robots and essentially issues which these devices have, what is that one thing that, or a couple of things that you would actually like to call out for manufacturers to take care of? Because many times you will see there are simple issues that they haven't worked upon, or these are low-hanging fruits that they can deal with and actually prevent many of these security issues. So have you seen any such patterns where they can, fix at least a few of these things and take care of most of the issues?
Yeah, so one of the things which I quite often see is surprisingly issues with TLS or SSL. So, and you would be surprised, like even like very big companies, US companies, they kind of forgot to enable the verification of SSL certificates. So that your app or the device which you have, but the app is actually worse because you are like in public spaces sometimes, where it doesn't check if the other party is like the server which it's supposed to talk to. And this happens surprisingly often. And it doesn't matter where the company comes from. It doesn't matter how expensive the product is. It doesn't matter, how big the company is. It's like a thing which is kind of inexcusable, and especially if a product is certified. And I mean, I was talking a lot about products which, in my case, when I'm hacking them, which have the European cybersecurity certification. So some pen testing company went through them, and certified that they are according to standards.
Oh,
And so, and this is not only one vendor, there's multiple vendors again. And
okay.
then we see like, okay, they don't check the certificate, so it's like these encryption is broken, and people can take over the accounts. And this is like something where I'm like, okay, you cannot trust just in certifications. You need to find like a different, you need to actually verify. Yeah, so SSL certificates or a secure communication is a big issue. The other thing, which is not necessarily a security issue, but more like a personal thing. I mean, I'm a IoT security and privacy researcher. Is like the telemetry, which we discussed
Yeah,
earlier,
yeah.
and it's a very hard sell to me at least, from the vendors, like why they need so much data which they send back, like from a light switch, from like a smart toaster or like a washing machine. And so this is like creates like I mean, they have the data, we store it somewhere, and this creates a risk at some point in the future, because if you have a breach and like all this data gets gone, then you can profile people very precisely with that. So that's one of the things. And the other things are kind of usual, like one of the ways how IoT developers develop their products, they just take a standard example code, modify it a little bit, it works. Like, yeah, we will fix it later, and we just push it out, and we never come back and fix it. So we don't have a secure by design. We just like, okay, just push the thing to the market, and then basically after 2-3 months, we just drop support even for that. Like, there's no firmware updates, and they move on to the next one. And this is like a generic problem like throughout the industry, and this is not only like IoT devices. This is cars. This is like you see it literally everywhere. This planned obsolescence, but it's not even planned obsolescence. It's literally like, okay, we need to sell more devices, even though that the old devices are like still fine, right? So it's kind of like the business model of many IoT companies is like, we need to sell more devices and just change one small feature in the new devices to kind of like, we say like, oh, this is better because of like this one small thing. And so that people kind of trash, the old one and buy a new one. And it's kind of like, I'm not a huge fan of that. And this is also part of the reason why I do my research, to kind of figure out like, okay, can we, backport updates back to older devices?
Yeah, I have been actually, I have always wondered why, especially the telemetry part, because I have been on both the sides and I look at, there's a lot of infrastructure requirements to even have stored that data, maintain that data, whatever you might be doing out of it. Is that really necessary? I think it's something that organizations should ask. Many times they just store it like that. Some of them make use of it for various things, but most of the times it's just to, make sure that systems are running, which is not always the case. Like, you do not need to actually gather so much data and, take care of it for that.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is also, I mean, we fight for like a thing where we can take a device like a vacuum robot, again, disconnect it from the cloud and just run it locally. And that's my main goal. I don't trust any cloud. It doesn't matter which cloud it is. I want to run it locally. And I'm surprised that a lot of manufacturers are like fighting against me being able to do that. Because in the end of the day, they save money through that, right? So if they go back to, let's say, some cloud company, we rent servers, we need to rent like traffic, basically. So what my robot is like sending back to them, we need to store it somewhere. So it would be way cheaper if they just sell me the hardware, and I don't use the cloud at all. But they have like this weird kind of thing where they kind of fight nails and tooth, like to kind of prevent me from like disconnecting from the cloud. Some vendors are even so like, if they don't see internet, the device will not work, even though there's no reason why it wouldn't work.
It should not work, right? Yeah, I get irritated with that too. Just the last question that I had for you is, what's next in line for you with respect to this research? With the robot itself, you can go very far. You could also try satellite robots for that matter, right? Or it could be smart fridge. But just for the researchers and for them to get that inspiration, what are the next things that you are planning to try?
So I mean, generally, I'm not doing only robots. I did also like a DEF CON, like a smart log talk, where we got the cease and desist letter. It was the 5th in history of DEF CON, where a talk kind of got like sent a legal notice before the talk.
Okay.
We still were able to give the talk based on like due to lawyers which we had. So I do a lot of like smart locks. I might do a little bit more smart locks in the future. One thing which I want to look at some point is like surprisingly, Ecovacs and other companies have actually professional big robots, like for hotels, for hospitals and things like that, or for restaurants. So I want to get my hands on one of them at some point. But yeah, I mean, interestingly, like you would think like at some point you cannot talk about robots anymore, but there's always new things, right?
New things,
so now there's a robot which has like an actual arm which you can actuate.
Oh, okay.
which can pick up a socks and kind of move the sock over there. And
Oh.
I never thought that this will be a
is getting
thing.
interesting.
I know. And so this is, I think, like a very similar movement which we had, like which I mentioned before, like. They didn't have microphones and cameras. Now they have like microphones and cameras, and in the future they have actually an arm now, which can even actuate thing in your apartment. So I feel, I mean, while I'm having like side projects like with smart locks and some other things, I feel I will be probably fine for the next couple of years still with vacuum robots.
Yeah, there are hundreds of, even in India, and I'm sure in the world, there are hundreds of such vendors coming up with smart locks. And of course, they're not all with the best safety standards, and this needs to happen. I think the difference with smart lock is not just it protects your home, but it's also persistently there. It's always connected, like it cannot stay unconnected. So there are a lot of possibilities there as an attacker.
The problem with smart locks is not necessarily if they work, but the problem is like if they don't work. So imagine you have a smart lock, you want to get into your apartment and it doesn't work and you're kind of locked out, right? So
yeah, they do have the manual key override.
But do you have the manual key with you all the time?
Yeah, no. So that's the reason that you bought the lock, right? So
exactly.
That's why you're there.
It defeats the purpose. And I mean, of course, there's like a safety override, but typically the key or the override for that is inside the door and you're standing outside.
Yeah, and there are fingerprint issues, a lot of other things because you store biometric and all of other kind of identity information there. So, but that's a lot of other things as well. I would be interested to have a second part of this episode because there's a lot of intelligence other than arms. You will also be getting a lot of intelligence coming into these devices in near future, I'm sure. And that will make your attacks way more interesting, is what I think. But thanks a lot for joining us today for this episode.
Yep, thank you again for the invitation.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us for this episode of Breakpoint. We will see you all in the next episode. Until then, bye-bye.